Well, today we're ending this everyday Bodhisattva practice period that we've been in for 3 months. And each of us has, in the beginning, has formulated, put on paper some intentions. And if I look at the intentions that I formulated, I was trying to give my practice a certain kind of direction. Maybe also a certain idea of frequency and regularity. And I assume you did something similar. And so maybe now, approximately 90 days later, how do you feel, Did you fail? Did you succeed? Did you comply with what you committed to, or did you slack off? I think it's interesting to observe that the intentions, if they are rooted in what Suzuki Roshi calls the inmost request, our deep desire to do with our lives what we feel is most important. If these intentions that we formulated come out of this inmost request, they're not going to stop. Whether you think you've succeeded or whether you think you've failed, those intentions continue. That's kind of interesting. I mean, if you succeed in reaching a goal, you could stop making an effort. But the intentions we formulate are not really intentions that lead us to the arrival at a goal. And so even if we think we did well, we need to continue anyway. So I remember in the talk that I gave for opening the practice period, I mentioned 8 ingredients. And at the time I had this feeling like, if we make these 8 ingredients part of our practice, then we are setting ourselves up for some nourishment. And I said we need to have a feeling for our inmost request and practice daily Zazen and do some intensive practice, because a certain kind of alchemy happens when now and then you sit a lot. And we need a sense of, or develop a sense of embodiment, however you do that. Why? Because the mind can be in the past or in the future in the modality of thinking. We can have memory or nostalgia. We can have plans, but the body always exists in the present. So there's other reasons for practicing embodiment, but it is the best way to locate yourself in the present. Now, Zazen in itself is an embodiment practice if you understand it sufficiently that way. It brings you into the body and into the present. And then I said it's important to work with views, and probably helpful to work with a teacher. Why? Not so much because you get very important input, it's because you articulate your own practice. Or you can use the relationship that way to articulate your practice. And then Sangha. And I said, and to be engaged with the world, what appears. And so I looked at this again today, and I thought, oh, this is actually pretty good. This is pretty good. If you have these ingredients in your practice in some measure, And then I thought, like, if I had to essentialize this and not have a list of 8, but a list of 3, I would say it's Zazen. It's working with views. This includes, articulating your views, articulating your understanding, working with views. And cultivating, on the basis of that, cultivating relationships. Letting Zazen and this cultivation and this working with views inform the cultivating of relationship. And then, in traditional terms, you have Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So if you decide to formally make yourself into a Zen practitioner in a formal way and take like lay initiation, or so, these are your first 3 vows, to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And like right now, to make this more accessible, I would say to take refuge in Zazen, working with views, and cultivating relationship. It's so clear. Practice, when you're new to practice, maybe practice is exciting. Like you are joining a group, or you're doing something new, or you're like, going on a retreat and get away from your life for a week and you're doing something special. But that wears off pretty quickly. And then I think the most fruitful attitude for practice is constancy. Now, I think the discovery of what constancy does leads basically to a monastic life. Like, people who say like, oh, I want constancy in my practice. I'm like, okay, I'll go to a monastery, or if you're so inclined, on solo retreat. That would be hard. I would find this very hard. But, the reason monasteries are fairly easy to live in, there's the practical complications of like certain renunciation that is necessary, and you have to like get up early or something. But after a while, that's not hard. It's just like your rhythm changes. It's like, I don't think that's the hardest part. It's actually pretty easy, because if your inmost request is to have a constant practice, then the environment very much supports that. It's like it makes it easy to follow through. And the reason it's easy is because other people are there waiting for you. They're like, oh, they're all in the Zendo, so I can't just stay in my room. So you are supported by other people's constancy, and your constancy supports other people, and so it's a kind of mutually beneficial, stabilizing and beneficial way of living together. Now, since we're not doing this, I wonder if I'm kind of speaking about this is an end, right? But it's really a beginning. Or it's a continuation. It's like maybe you feel like you're released from school, it's spring. Now the fun can begin, No, I'm just kidding. But, something is over. But when you do that, you feel released from school and you play around. At some point, you kind of naturally want to come back to your practice. So I was going to say, if we're not living in a monastery, then the best thing is, if you want a constant practice, is to embrace your daily routine. Don't complain about it. Just make use of it. Like, you already have a daily routine. So just stick certain things into your daily routine. So like, your Zazen has a certain slot. Your study has a certain slot. Your Sangha practice has a certain slot. Just stick it in. And to appreciate that our life unfolds through routine. And like I said, not complain about it. It's like, oh, my life is such a routine. I sometimes, that routine gives us stability, reliability with ourselves. It's like, you're not proving anything to anybody. When I thought about this, I had this image of like, okay, so I'm swimming, I'm swimming laps. And at some point, swimming laps is kind of boring. It's just back and forth. That's the routine, right? Then I'm like, I'm done with this. I just want to splash in the water. Right? So then you say I'm done with this. I want to splash in the water. Then you splash in the water. After a while, splashing in the water is nothing novel. It's not particularly exciting anymore. So it feels kind of good to go back to swimming laps. I experience this all the time. I have a certain routine that practice is part of that routine. Picking my son up from school is part of that routine. Doing various tasks, cooking, part of the routine. So woven together in some way. But then, now and then I travel, right? And then everything falls apart. You know the feeling? It's like you travel and it all falls apart. That's like splashing in the water. And if you don't have a comparative mind, then you appreciate the routine, and then you appreciate the splashing in the water, the way it all falls apart. And if I do this falling apart for too long, I'm going to feel, I don't know, what's the feeling? Not grounded, unbalanced. So it can only go on for so long. For me, I'm just reporting. Maybe you find yourself in this description. So it's a kind of, if you feel that kind of thing in yourself, there's a kind of natural pulse between doing your practice as a routine and between breaking away from that and just fooling around. It's okay. Just when that sense comes that it's good to come back to the routine, don't ignore it. One of my favorite phrases from the Book of Serenity is the koan collection is saluting at the gate and walking down the hallway, these have a reason. That's swimming laps, that's the routine, right? But what about dancing in the garden and wagging the head? out the back door. Yeah. Just like that. Now, I don't know if you can follow me there, but I envision us, each of us, as an everyday bodhisattva. And the traditional understanding of the bodhisattva is, the early understanding of the bodhisattva, that the bodhisattva, a wisdom being, is someone who's aspiring on the path of awakening, to awakening on the path. So you put yourself on the path, that makes you into a bodhisattva. But then later, in Mahayana Buddhism, there's a certain twist where, like the bodhisattva turns into an awakened being, into a Buddha, we could say, when the path is complete. And then this traditional understanding is that the Buddha reaches nirvana and is freed from all suffering. Then your bodhisattva path is over because you've reached the goal. And Mahayana Buddhism says, well, if we truly live in an undivided world, in a world of undivided activity, to use the term of the text that we studied, then we're not divided from other beings. We can't look at our life as a singular existence that then transcends suffering and goes to some other place called nirvana. We need to understand that this journey is not over until all beings are, on the path of awakening and liberated from suffering. So the bodhisattva, in this understanding, gives up his or her transcendence and returns to samsara, the world of suffering, to help all other beings. Now, there's something not quite right with this. There's a tension here between nirvana and samsara. It's like, here's this world of transcendence, of liberation from suffering, and here is this world of suffering. And we could go there, like I could go there into this transcendent realm, but no, I sacrifice it for other beings. You could read it this way. Then you uphold a dualism, a separateness between samsara and nirvana. Even though you are turning with your compassion to all these beings, they're mired in samsara and you are a helper. I think Dogen, whose views we studied in this practice period, has a kind of radicalized view of this bodhisattva existence. The first shift, I think, we need to make to come into a kind of accord with his views, as my interpretation of it, is that you need to understand what the location of your practice is. The location of your practice is here now. It's not like over there with some being who you have to help. The location of your practice is here. Here and now are not separable. And, I would like right now, I would like you to open your eyes and your heart and see and feel here. It's not difficult. For a moment, it's not difficult. And then maybe it's useful to understand this here now as widening horizons. You can start with the body. The body is here. Your body is here. This here is also, it's your here. It's not like some abstract thing. It's the here that you inhabit. And maybe our practice is how fully are we inhabiting this here. But, okay, so you can start with the body and feel it, like we can use the breath and body sensations to locate ourselves here in this body. And then it can widen out. And it can include this situation. Maybe this situation is bounded kind of by the walls of this room. And then it can widen and it can reach out into the city and into widened arenas of society. And then it can also reach into the earth as a natural environment and the whole cosmos. It's all here. And this can be the location of your practice. And you're not practicing toward anything else. You're not practicing toward some kind of awakening in the future. You're always just practicing toward here. Because you're not going anywhere. You understand? You're not leaving here. That whole way we're located in here doesn't change. The contents of here change, but this location, if we want to use that word, is not changing. Now, what's a good way to turn this experience of here into suffering? What would you have to do to make this miserable? Any ideas?
Wish it otherwise. Somewhere else. Wish it were otherwise.
Yeah, wish it was otherwise. Resisted. Think about it.
Grab onto it.
Yeah, grasp it. Exactly. The three poisonous minds. Greed, hate, and delusion, or, I think greed and hate are like words that I find too morally charged. It's sort of like, oh God, I need to be ashamed of how greedy I am. I need to punish myself for how much hatred lives in me. I just like to say grasping and resisting because it's more technical. It's like it's not morally abhorrent. It's just like it's actually the way we are conditioned, and it kind of comes with being an animal. Observe other animals; they're grasping and resisting too. It's not like it's just morally depraved. Of course, if you don't form a relationship to grasping and resisting as the way that you create suffering in this here and now location, right? If you don't form a relationship with that and have a way to counter it, it can flower into greed and hate, and it will do some real damage. Flower, maybe that's not a good word. Fester. Right. There's the bud of grasping and the flower of greed. Now, delusion is a kind of interesting ingredient here. I usually speak just about grasping and resisting, and delusion is implied because you kind of need to have a view of something as preferable to grasp it, or you need to have a view of something as undesirable to resist it. But anyway, let me say something about delusion here for a moment. Is whenever you frame something and come to a view and then fixate that view and then invest it with belief, then that's your path into delusion. This is not so easy to track, actually, because we are taught to make an effort to understand the world. So you are educated to constantly grasp the world conceptually to come to an understanding. And if your understanding is working pretty well, then soon enough you have a sense that the map you create, the conceptual map you created of the world and your life, is actually describing reality accurately. This is delusion. Now you've arrived. You think that what you think is actually how the world is. Nagarjuna says about emptiness, he says, emptiness is the relinquishing of all views. So, you may have views, but your practice would need to be to hold them lightly. Like, well, that's a view, It's been serving me in these circumstances. This seems like a reasonable way to understand this. But you kind of need to hold yourself open to how this view is one-sided or not quite right, or that certainly a lot of other people see it differently. This would be like, take the belief out of your view, suspend it as, one possibility. So maybe emptiness is a confusing term for many people, and maybe it's better, more easily accessible to speak of openness. It's open. It's not fixed. It's not closed down into one particular frame. So if you understand how to turn here into suffering, you could practice that a little bit, like now and then, just, really resist something. Really, like, form a fixed view. See what happens. It's actually impossible. If you do it deliberately, you can stop it, right? But it's that fact that we are doing it that we're doing it unconsciously, that we're doing it in a non-deliberate way, that creates the suffering. So that's why it's funny to say, like, how could you turn this into suffering? Because that implies this deliberate attempt to, like, really make it happen, which none of us do this deliberately. But it makes something clear. Okay, so, like, that's how we turn it into suffering. And then equally you could say, how do we end suffering? How do we turn this here now location into nirvana, into this place that Buddhas inhabit? And we do it by releasing, grasping, resisting, and fixed views. So, how do you do it? How is that a practice? Zazen is a practice for that. Surprise, surprise. So when you sit Zazen, you sit upright. You don't lean forward, you don't lean back, you don't lean to the side, you don't lean to the left or the right, We can think of this symbolically, it's like we're not becoming one-sided. We're staying in our center. Physically speaking, there's ease that comes from being upright because we're kind of obeying the gravity and the anatomy of the spine and so forth. And the way it is hard for us to be at ease in this upright position is a sign of how, there's some friction in our life. Like this is uncomfortable to discover, that the body is not at ease. So Zazen isn't fun in that regard. And then you bring attention to breathing, and you make like I'm recently been speaking about this as like you make a center. You use the center of gravity of the body to locate yourself there, like the hara. And the central column of the body, this uprightness, and you can intentionally nourish and foster and develop this sense of centeredness. And so when the world is swirling around and you get pulled in some direction and you grasp and you resist and so forth, and then you notice it, right? Now you're waking up and you're like, oh, I'm creating suffering. You take responsibility for that and you come back to center. Just come back. You can worry about it, you can blame yourself, you can blame others, it can get very complicated, and you could also just drop that and come back to center, and don't invite those thoughts to tea. That would be another thing we do, right? We don't invite our thoughts to tea. All this stuff is going on. You release it, you come back to center, and you are actually back here. This is it. And you do it thousands and thousands of times. And this is it. You say like, oh, I don't want to do this 1,000 times. I just want to do it 2 times and arrive. Well, just do something else then. splash in the water. It's fine. And then also, just briefly, I want to mention, we keep our eyes half open, half closed. And that's giving up, in this simple posture of the eyes, that is giving up the dualism between interior and exterior. You have some of your attention on your interiority, and you have some attention on your exteriority, and they are happening simultaneously at the same time. So, and this is actually a way to embody here in widening circles. Do you understand? If you have here as like, oh, that's inside and outside is there, you're small and in a big world, and the world is out there and you've got to deal with it. And if you have attention simultaneously on the interior and the exterior, there's a feeling of a big space, a big here, a big mind emerging that is inclusive. I think this big space that is inclusive of everything is Dogen calls the total function. Undivided activity. If we think of that just as a philosophical concept, it's like, yeah, what is that? If you practice it as a here, it's something different. Life is like riding in a boat. Yes, I set the sail and I steer and I use the pole to push. Yet, this boat is giving me a ride. I'm riding the boat, and yet the boat is also giving me a ride. And there's no I, Dogen says, and there is no I separate from the boat. You have your own understanding of this metaphor, right, that we've looked at in a pretty detailed way, but I'm thinking of the boat as the situation, like I'm in this is the boat I'm in. And there's no separation between myself and the situation. The other day I was standing in front of my closet, pulling out my robes, and I had this moment of like, this whole thing is giving me a ride. Like, I'm not doing any, like I could say, like I took the robes out of my, but it felt like they were handing themselves to me. I don't know. Do you know?
Yes.
That kind of feeling? That is, there is no I separate from the boat. And that boat is not separate from the water, the sky, and the shore. This is more the cosmic here. Sorry. The widest horizon. Now, I want to end in conclusion. I want to read you something from Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. So Tsukuyoshi says, if your mind is related to something outside itself, that mind is a small mind, a limited mind. It's just what I just said, right? Mind, you are here, and there's stuff over there, then that's a small mind that relates to something outside. If your mind is not related to anything else, if it's not related to something outside, then there is no dualistic understanding in the activity of your mind. You understand activity as just waves of your mind. So what's going on here is just waves in the mind. Big mind experiences everything within itself. Do you understand the difference between the two minds? The mind which includes everything and the mind which is related to something? Actually, they are the same thing, but the understanding is different. And your attitude toward life will be different according to which understanding you have. That everything is included within your mind with, we call it mind and you're like, well, is it my mind? Just call it here if you want to. Just call it here. That everything is included within this here, which is your experience. You can call it mind, but then it's like, oh, I thought my mind, that was inside and it was doing the thinking and stuff. Yeah, but you've got to work with your views. That everything is included within your mind is the essence of mind. To experience this is to have religious feeling. Big mind and small mind are one. They're undivided. When you understand your mind in this way, you have some security in your feeling. As your mind does not expect anything from outside, it is always filled. This is so simple. It's like there's always something going on. You may not like it, and that's your invitation to create suffering. There's something going on, and I don't like it, and so I'm going to resist it and fight it and try to get away from it, and there you have the recipe fulfilled. But anyway, there's always something going on, so your mind is always filled. A mind with waves in it is not a disturbed mind, but actually an amplified one. Whatever you experience is an expression of big mind. Just because there are some waves, that's not disturbance. Or maybe you call it disturbance, but you don't have to be disturbed about the disturbance. The disturbance that Suzuki Roshi is talking about is when you resist certain kinds of waves. Like, not these waves, please. Only these waves. With big mind, we accept each of our experiences as if recognizing the face we see in a mirror as our own. For us, there is no fear of losing this mind. Why? Because you can't lose it. Sometimes you want to lose it, that's the problem. Geez, now this is happening too? Maybe it'd be better to check out for a while this is happening. There's nowhere to come or to go. And there is no fear of death, no suffering from old age or sickness. Because we enjoy all aspects of our life as an unfolding of big mind, because we enjoy all aspects of our life as an unfolding of big mind, we do not care for any excessive joy. So we have imperturbable composure. And it is with this imperturbable composure of big mind that we practice Zazen. So it's like, if you don't see the enjoyment of just being alive and everything that's happening, right, then you need some excessive joy. I like this a lot. Some excessive joy. I mean, you need excitement. You need to entertain yourself. Yeah. Feel into this. I want to encourage you, feel into this as the natural continuation of your practice, commitment. And when we lose our way, grasping, resisting, getting deluded in some fixed view, we can just return. you don't have to make a big deal out of this. You can just return. It's like coming back to zero. You went off into this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I was giving my son a bath yesterday, or he was taking a bath, and I was sitting by the side of the bath, and we practiced counting. And we counted backwards from 100. And I thought, like, it's easy to count back from him from 9, like 9, 29, 28, 27, 20, to 21, and then it's like, when he's at 21, it's like, then what? And it's like, 20. And then from 20, it's like, where do you go from there? And it made me think of like how the pathways of our thinking are conditioned in this way. It's easy for us to do this counting. It's not so easy. It's not natural for him. He's got to learn. And so we learn to see the world a certain way and, string this view with this together and have this picture. And it's kind of like it needs to also just come apart. And it's like, maybe I don't even have to count at all. Like maybe I'll just splash in the water. So give yourself permission when you see yourself entangled to just come back to here, now, this, breathing, presence, senses. Let it come. Let it be your life. Thank you.